Hello. So the V450 release candidate 2 is out and ready to be tested. And as an update to what we discussed last week, an email has been sent out to the NVM team to hopefully have them help with some testing of it. And next we have Trevor.
The real path, or at this point lack thereof, with the discussion looking like it's heading towards doing a revert and implementing the fix in LibUV. I'm holding off on my PR. There are 2 commits in there, though, I still think should land regardless. Just some benchmarks and tests. Next is Richard.
Hi, so I've been tweaking the Ctc Governance Docs that hopefully you've been following along with. Probably want to talk about that in the section at the end. I onboarded Andrash, who did a bunch of timer performance work. He's a collaborator now, so actually he might not be a bad person for you to ping, Julian. Although I'm not sure that general timers is his jam, but might be worth finding out. I'm gonna do Prince J. Wesley next, and after that I'm out of nominees, so I'm open for other ideas. If you know of anybody doing great work who really ought to be onboarded, let me know. And other than that, just doing the never-ending Sisyphean whack-a-mole of eliminating flaky tests. I believe Jeremiah's here now, so we can go back to him if he has anything to report.
Hi, I just finished setting up the live stream. You can go on.
Okay, let's just roll into the meeting. So previous, if there's anything arising out of this that you'd like to comment on, please do so. Otherwise, we'll move through. We talked about dropping support for Visual Studio 2013. Still on the agenda again this week, so we can talk about it again. We did Real Path on the agenda again. Object prototype inheriting on that from for the HTTP headers. That's on the agenda again, and the 450 is on the agenda again, and so is what WG URL. Do we have James this week?
He posted in the issue that he's on vacation, he's not going to be here, and suggested that issue can be tabled until next week. It's also been suggested that we table the dropping support issue until there's more to report from Joao and others.
Great. Sorry I haven't caught up today on fresh out of bed. Okay. Good. So let me just do some copy pasting. Somebody's done that.
I got it, Rob. I mean, unless you want to do it. There's something you want to know.
So let's go into Real Path and have some fun. So sorry I haven't caught up overnight on the activity on this one, if there's been any. But the latest status was that there's been a lot more discussion about reversion. And somebody speak to the current status of this one.
Maybe Trevor?
Yeah, well, I mean, it looks like everybody's leaning towards just doing a full revert, or at least a mostly partial revert, until LibUV's implementation is fixed. I still find that unfortunate on the Linux, or basically non-Windows side, because we have a fix for everything but the Windows side. But if that's the way everybody wants it, though, I did comment that I believe we should look into the supposed performance issues and why we need cache, and see how performance does without cache. And if it shows to be just fine, then I say we leave cache out, because Saul points out that if we can leave that out, then we can change the implementation underneath without needing to do a major revision.
Arno, can you speak to the work that you've been doing there?
Yeah, basically, I'm pretty much agreeing with Trevor that I find it a bit unfortunate that we would have to do a full revert for the Unix systems. Sagul made a good point about like only reverting for Windows would double the API surface and the surface for bugs, which might be something we don't want to do. Also, yeah, like I don't know if we have any benchmarking numbers for like requiring projects with a large number of files, like how much is the startup time there, how performant is that, because I believe that is the primary function of the cache to work well there. I don't know if Node Glob has any benchmarks. Miles mentioned that they are using the cache, and it seems like something where benchmarking could make sense. Also, yeah, I've started trying to port the JS implementation that was used before V6 to C for like later inclusion in libuv. That's going to take quite a bit of time, I'm afraid. I'll keep you updated when I've got something to show. But like that's probably nothing I'll have ready in the next few days.
We do have two benchmarks that run every night, but and the one is basically, I think, a require cached and a require non-cached. But I don't know how well they map to the scenario you said, like, a project using a large number of files or not. So we may, like at one point, we saw a fairly large increase, improvement in one of those benchmarks. And I'm wondering if maybe we'll see the corresponding decrease if we do this reversion.
I think the improvement came from something that Ben did that was separate.
Right, okay, so maybe it's unrelated.
I think it might be okay to consider a Windows-specific revert on this one. I don't fully understand the argument about doubling the bug surface area because the libuv implementation is going to be different anyway. So it's going to be two implementations for Linux and Windows anyway.
If we go that route, then we need to make sure that Trevor's work on resolving the eloop stuff is integrated, because that's one of the overlapping areas where if we left it as it is, then we would have eloop being resolved okay on Windows, but not on non-Windows. So we'd have to still have all that stuff pulled in.
Hey, Rod.
I would still be in favor of that. Yeah.
Rod and Trevor, just a quick question regarding the eloop stuff. Does that resolve all the circumstances where eloop could be thrown prior to other system errors? Because that was also a cause of some unexpected behavior changes.
Well, I mean, okay, so the old implementation didn't have a perfect eloop resolution implementation. In fact, it was kind of buggy because if the eloop was too deep, I mean, like ridiculously deep, it would actually return with can't find the file. Whereas, well, when in reality it wasn't eloop. This implementation will go to great lengths to allow you to resolve folders. It'd have to be something like 3,200 folders deep before it eventually returns and says, okay, all right, I've gone too far, I'm not going to go any further.
So my concern here is LTS. We're heading into an LTS for version 6, and we can't leave this in this situation for that. So that's why I'm in favor of a close to full reversion. I actually don't mind whether we go with or without the cache option. It seems to me including it would be the logical path, because then we get back to original status, and then we can work on an improved version for version 7 onwards, just simply so that we have stability going into LTS for this. Performance gain's great, but it'll be the same as what's in version 4 LTS now. So not a really big deal for users, and it'll be improved eventually.
Wasn't this like a big deal for Broccoli.js, where they were real pathing tons and tons of files for their build system, and everything became took minutes and minutes to do or something?
That's how this originally came up. If you go all the way back to that first issue, I had just a side comment of, well, why don't we just use the, in Node, why don't we just go ahead and use, access? And Shaul popped in and was like, well, let's just do that in libuv. And then I forgot who it was. Somebody finally implemented it in libuv, and now we're here.
So,
but see, they're gonna still have that performance thing on version 4, which is LTS for a while now.
yes,
for a while, so it's
sort of a problem. I'm not saying that we don't have problems now, but
is it out of the question to revert the interface, but also create another public interface that goes to the libuv method? Because if we're talking about stuff between the two LTSs, we're about to upgrade to 1.9, so it wouldn't be completely crazy that we could expose that as a minor update to give, like Broccoli, for example, access to that interface to do faster resolution, but not make that the default resolution for anything else.
We're also stuck with that for all time if we implement it.
Yeah, and then we still have the Windows problem.
Also,
if they're really concerned about performance, they could try and do something on their end. I imagine that maybe this has come up because they wanted to try and fix performance on our end. But if we push back and said, look, we just for this version we can't, then they might be willing to revisit on their end.
I would probably be in favor of that too, of reverting and doing that at this point. I probably would have been in favor of reverting 2 weeks ago, because this has been going on for a really long time, and we should worry about fixing this stuff before that other stuff. Just acknowledge that it's still a problem in the state it's in V4 too for users.
I definitely agree. We should not be compromising correctness for performance. And it's been broken for a while now. In terms of bringing back the cache argument, I would be more in favor of keeping the removal of the cache argument, so that this is not a breaking change. So basically, the original fix was an intended breaking change in the removal of the cache argument, and an unintended breaking change in the Windows issues and the eLoop. So if we fix the unintended breaking changes, it could be considered just a patch.
Well, okay, about the cache thing, wouldn't it? I feel like that could be managed outside of the RealPath API. If modules still wanted to keep a cache, that would be very hard to just move into the module so that it keeps its own cache and does partial resolution.
That's true. That's true. But are we potentially reverting to a situation where it is significantly slower for a portion of users? If Node Glob is using the cache, then are we making RealPath even slower for Glob?
Yeah, we'll definitely need benchmarks. We'll also have to. This is really difficult to benchmark because of SSDs now more popular than was originally implemented. Caching and kernel level caching, I find I'll start writing to my disk, and at first it's holy crap, I'm doing 500 megs a second, and I realize, oh no, I'm not. Hard drive or the kernel is just caching it up, or holy crap, suddenly I'm able to access my files so much faster. Oh no, I'm not. The kernel's cached small, right? So properly benchmarking this is going to be a bit of a pain. We'll have to create a huge number of things, require them, dump them, and create a whole bunch more things and require them if we want absolute fresh, the times without cached, right?
If you're benchmarking on Linux, there's a syscontrol that lets you dump all the current disk cache buffers so that you start with a clean slate.
Oh, nice.
And if you're going to ask which one it is, I'd have to look it up, but I'll let you know on IRC.
This is why I'm in favor of a full reversion, just simply because if we start, debating the cache option, then we're going to postpone this for another month or two. We need action to happen now. It's a breaking change, but it's still an object, so it's actually not going to break anyone's code. It's just going to break expectations if they're using the new option, which they can only use in version 6 anyway. So it's not going to actually break people's code in a my program is going to die way.
So quick question: what exactly is the new argument that replaced it? What is that? So it accepts an object. Like, what would that normally be?
It's an options object that may have an encoding property set, but I don't think that would be a problem.
That does not sound like a problem. We should just revert.
And if we still want to tinker in version 6, we can do. But let's just go back to what we know works for users, and then evolve from there.
Do we have a list of the original bugs? Because I knew there were and I think Jeremiah was mentioning it, that there were a handful of resolving bugs with the old implementation that were fixed by this.
I don't know of any resolving bugs in the old implementation. I just know of very heavy performance problems.
So Saul definitely knows, and we should reach out and just have that documented in part of the reversion, in my opinion.
No, he's the one that's been documented. There's a meta issue. I forget what number it is, but he's documented all the issues that have arisen from using the new API.
Yeah, but he hasn't documented the issues that came up that led to the change in the first place. That's what Miles is asking for.
Okay.
So it's like a list of known issues.
Yeah, he's brought up before that there were a number of known issues that were closed by doing this, so it would just be good to have on our radar what those are.
Yeah, I guess if they were actually closed, you'd want to reopen them even.
Okay, back to GitHub for now, and let's try and see if we can magically get more resolution before next week. Doesn't sound like we have anything to do a vote on for this right now, but on GitHub. Okay, next is the V50 proposal. Miles, did you want to say anything on this, or shall we move on from that?
I don't think that there's much to be said, but it doesn't seem like there's been tons of people putting eyes on it. So, I had emailed the folks over at NPM and have not heard a response back yet. So maybe offline, Rod, you and I can just talk about how we can improve what's going on right now.
Yep. Okay. So the reason this is on the agenda, same as last week, is just mainly raising visibility to everyone here that this needs testing. There's an RC out that needs testing because we have a libUV upgrade that we just want to be sure is not going to
Miles, I have customers who are actually testing that version, that RC2 version currently. So I might be able to give you feedback later this week.
Amazing. Thank you. I've been using it locally myself, and if anyone else usually uses V4 locally, it would be great if you could just toss this in there. Thanks, Julian.
Moving on, Brendan Herrick from Object Prototype. Brian, where are we at with this? I'm sorry if there's been an update since I commented in that issue.
I don't. There hasn't been anybody commenting on it, so I'm not sure. I think we may still be where we were last week. So it may be something we need to vote on unless we can convince everyone to go along with one solution.
Yeah, last week I think we all had opinions, but Rod, you wanted people to be more informed, so hopefully we all took a look at that issue.
So the problem with voting is that we don't have clear options that we're voting on. So Brian, unless you can form some wording for voting now, do you want to do that, or do you want to take another week for it?
Actually, I want to take a deeper look at it. I didn't get a chance to do this yet. So from a performance point of view, I want to look at maps. So I think it would be best to give me some time to look at this as well and come back next week.
Okay, if you want to explore a map thing, I'm probably gonna have to use getters and setters to do map back. So because we don't want to break API there. So the proposal that was on the table
A map won't
when we left
actually
off.
work because it needs to work with everyone's existing APIs on the object. Like
So the basic-
you can't just do that because everyone accesses the headers object.
Right. So, so my understanding of the summary of the issue was that we wanted to go with a null prototype, and the general sense I got was that eventually we want to move to a map down the road, and I want to make sure that we don't have to go through to two changes that are big, and if there's something we can do. So if the goal is to go to a map, what is preventing us from doing that now?
Because everyone accesses the headers object, and expects it to be an object they can set and get properties from, including the existing ones.
I think the problem here is that the map is an ideal that we like the ideal of, but I'm not sure we're actually going to be able to get there because the change in API is just too big.
Yeah, I think through getter and setters we might be able to get there. And the reason actually I want to explore this is because the headers is a source for a lot of DOPS, and not a it's a lot of megamorphic ICs, and map is purpose built for it. So I think there's performance implications of this that are visible not necessarily in micro benchmarks. In real world workload, this might have more interesting behaviors that I want to explore.
Okay, that's fine. Let's not make it move on this week, but I just wanted to recap that last week we did leave off on the suggestion that we treat this just like with query string, which is removing all, like just a null backed object and removing all things. So that was the proposal that we left off on. So if anyone wants to have a look at this during the week, we can come back to it next week.
Yeah, I think, can I just inject one thing real quick? I think that you know, we were talking about, you know, putting in an object and removing the, you know, the underbar proto and things like that. And the map, of course, is the ideal. But I mean, Brian, is it correct to assume that the object chain, you know, putting in an object with no, you know, keeping it as an object but removing the, you know, the prototype chain is a relatively straightforward thing, and the maps will not be, and there's no reason that the object can't be a step towards the maps if that will work, or if there's performance benefits there, and then you already have all the tests in place to like check, you know, the things that the simple fix will fix.
So I'd like to mention two things here. Number one is sort of the reason why we've gone this way for this change in URL pars and here, and that's because we've had a good amount of reports in the past of people getting like __ proto sent from, you know, some external source, and maybe that can cause a problem if you're doing things that aren't right. So it's kind of like a pseudo security fix in that sense. The other thing I'd like to mention, and this, like, if you want to experiment with maps, rather than trying to make it fit this API, this is probably a better idea. There is an issue that's probably like 4 years old on the old issue tracker. That's like that a lot of people like asked for a proper API for this for, and I tried to look at that like early last year, I think. There's a bunch of problems that revolve around how we deal with implicit headers with actually making APIs for this. But if we're gonna like look at changing how all this fundamentally works, we should really just make an API for it, because that way we won't really have this problem of having to adjust this legacy thing that, you know, hopefully it can eventually go away, and maybe we are stuck with some form of it for the meantime, but that should really be the ideal path forward here. Maybe not just ideal, I think it probably should be seriously investigated.
Okay, sounds like it's back to GitHub. So if we have Brian, if you can think about some wording for a vote next week, we can actually do that if it's ready for it.
Okay.
So this is fair warning to everyone here about investigating the options. Okay. Anything else before we move on to public Q&A? Nope. Okay. So if anyone listening to live stream has any questions, then please dump them in YouTube or the GitHub issue or IRC, and we'll see if we can address them.
How many viewers do we have?
We had 6, but now we have 1.
Wow, we must have gotten really boring.
I think everyone just wanted to hear about Real Path, and that was it.
Exciting topic. Maybe it was all the NPM team. Okay. So let's assume that there's nothing, and we'll roll ahead. So the upcoming meetings that we are aware of. Next week is next Thursday, CTC meeting. Sorry, it's Wednesday for everyone. Next Wednesday is CTC. Next Thursday is TSC. Although it's Node Summit, so a few of us will be out of action. So keep an eye out for updates on that. Build Working Group is on in 3 weeks' time. LTS is on next week, apparently. Diagnostics is on the 3rd of August. We don't know postmortem or API. So that's upcoming
Yeah,
meetings.
they'll be about a month from now because we just had them recently.
There's also the postmortem group is talking about meeting at Node Summit next week. Isn't that correct, Michael?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, we're going to get together at a restaurant or whatever and have an informal chat.
Ooh. Okay. Also, Mars, I'd like to talk about maybe shifting LTS to a three weekly cycle, but we can talk about that in the LTS repo. And so that's it for public meeting. We have some private business to move on to, but thanks everyone for listening. And if you're listening to this recording afterwards, thank you for taking an interest. Bye for now.
Bye.